What's up, guys? David Bay back again for another episode of MD Training 101. Today's segment brought to you by StrongSupplements.com and Iron Rebel Power Gear. Make sure to check out Strong Supplements for all your supplemental needs and IronRebel.com for both men and women's apparel, as well as all your lifting gear, wrist wraps, knee braces, elbow sleeves, you name it. Now, if it's your first time tuning in, MD Training 101 is a basic weight training series focused on teaching you guys the fundamentals of weight training. For today's workout, we're going to be hitting chest. Let's get started. All right, guys, the first exercise in today's chest workout is going to be the bench press. As 8-time Mr. Olympia Lee Haney once said, the bench press is the bread and butter of the chest exercises. That couldn't be more true. Now, the bench press has a little bit of a bad rep, especially in the bodybuilding community, for the frequency of injuries that we tend to see with the flat barbell press. But guys, those can be avoided by doing a few things. 1, making sure you're warming up good. 2, using a weight that you can handle. And 3, making sure that you're doing the exercise with proper form. That all being said, let's get started. Now, again, this is a very basic exercise. It should be the staple of pretty much any chest workout. Guys, it's a pretty basic exercise. You're pretty much just going to be picking the bar up off the rack. You want to get your hands a little bit wider out than shoulder width apart. If you get in too narrow, that's more of a close grip press, works the triceps. You start getting out real wide, that starts putting a little bit more strain on your outer pec. That's when we tend to see a little bit higher frequency for injuries. Now, speaking of injuries, guys, when we're doing the bench press and we're bringing the weight down, because your hands are basically in a locked position on the bar, one thing we want to do when we're bringing our arms down is we want to tuck our elbows just a little bit. And why we're doing that is when we bring the bar down like this with our elbows straight out, again, that's going to put a lot of strain on the outer pec. Now, we don't want to tuck our elbows all the way in and have it be like a close grip bench press, but again, tucking your elbows in just a little bit on the way down can really help avoid putting, again, that strain on the outer chest and avoid injuries. Now, as far as mistakes that we tend to see with the bench press, as with a lot of our heavier compound exercises, the most common mistake is, guys, just using too much weight and the form ends up being sacrificed. The most common mistake is not going through a full range of motion. I'm sure you guys have seen it at the gym a million times, as have I. Guys putting too much weight down, or on the bar rather, and not coming all the way down. Now, unless you have some sort of mobility issues with your shoulders or your pecs or whatever, in which case you might even want to avoid this. But again, unless you have some sort of mobility issues, you really should be bringing the bar all the way down to your chest. Now, again, this is going to require that you pick a weight that you can really handle with good form. So I'm going to get down on the bench, give you guys a little bit of demonstration. But again, hands a little bit wider and shoulder width apart. We're just going to take it off, bring it all the way down. Now, we're not powerlifting here, so we don't have to necessarily pause at the bottom end. But another thing we don't want to do is we don't want to be bouncing the weight off of our chest. We want to come down in a nice controlled manner, up and down, not too fast. We're not bouncing it to use momentum. Good controlled form. Now, if you guys are training alone, generally speaking, it's a good idea to ask somebody at the gym to spot you on this particular exercise. More ideal if you're training with a training partner. It's one of those where if you get stuck, you're going to be in trouble. So again, always have a spotter when you start getting into those working sets where there's a chance that you might reach failure and not be able to get the weight off you. Having somebody to pick the weight up off is pretty standard when you get into the heavier sets, a lift off. Again, I'm just doing this lighter weight for instructional purposes, so I don't necessarily need a lift off, but again, something you might want to have when you get into those heavier sets. So again, I'm just going to lay down. Most of these bars have a grip width indicators, little lines that you can kind of use as a guide for each time you get in. But I'm going to get, again, my hands a little bit wider and shoulder width apart. Going to pick the weight up off the rack. A nice controlled motion. I'm going to bring it down to my chest and press. Guys, next up in our chest workout is going to be the incline dumbbell press. Now, the chest is a big dynamic muscle group, so it's one of those muscle groups that you want to train with a variety of different types of exercises. We did the barbell press for our flat bench. I'm going to move over and use the dumbbells for the incline press. Now, the fundamentals of this lift are very similar to that of the regular bench press. We're going to start with our hands in an up position, bring them down in a nice controlled manner. You want to get a deep stretch on the bottom end. Generally with the dumbbells, because you don't have a bar hitting across your chest, you can come down and get even a little bit deeper of a stretch than you can with the traditional barbell press. For today's workout, just kind of using a little bit lighter weight for instructional purposes, guys. But you know, a couple of the mistakes that we tend to see on this are the same as with the regular bench press. Guys using too heavy a weight, only coming down a little bit of ways, not going through the full range of motion. That's not something we want to do. Now, as far as getting this set up, I have the bench about at a 45-degree angle. Some people prefer to have it a little bit higher. Some people prefer to have it a little bit lower. It really just becomes a matter of personal preference. Anytime you're doing a dumbbell exercise, guys, as with everything, make sure you can handle the weight that you pick. You don't want to be tossing the weights around. That's a great way to get kicked out of a gym. So again, we're going to get started here. It's pretty basic, guys. You're just going to pick the weights up off the floor, get it on your knees. Now, people who are beginners sometimes have a little bit hard time getting the weights into position to start it. Generally, guys, what you're going to do, lean forward a little bit, pop your knees up, and that's going to help you get the dumbbells in the right position. We're just going to start here. Press all the way up and down and up. Now, some people prefer to bring the dumbbells together in the middle when you come to the top. It helps get a little bit extra squeeze. Not necessary, again, just a matter of personal preference. Some guys prefer just to come straight up and back down. Again, really just what feels best for you. Again, bringing the weight back down to my knees and then to the floor. I'm not tossing those weights. You know, I don't want to be breaking any dumbbells, and when you start getting up into the heavier weights, you start dropping those bad boys, guys. It might look cool on video, but gym owners aren't going to think it's too cool when you start cracking dumbbells. All right, guys, next up is going to be the dip. Now, Crunch Fitness here in Appleton has some really nice dip stations, but these are setups that you can find at pretty much any gym across the country, newer or old school. And some gyms, real old school gyms, have setups actually in the squat racks with bars that come off of the sides. You can do dips there. This is a pretty basic exercise. A lot of people prefer to do it with weight, guys. Most gyms have the weighted belts where the weight hangs beneath your legs, and so you can add some good resistance to this exercise. For today's purposes, I'm just going to go through the form and you know, the basics of this particular exercise. But again, remember, when you start getting into more advanced strength training, you're probably going to want to use a little bit of weight, as your body weight gets to be a little bit light for most people. Now, this exercise, done right, is going to focus a little bit on the upper chest. Now, there's a couple different ways to do the dips. Now, it's very popular to do dips for triceps as well as for the chest. The biggest difference is going to be for the chest. We're going to lean forward a little bit on these dips. It's going to look a lot like this, where the tricep dip, you're upright a little bit more and doing it like that. Now, as far as getting started, this particular setup, as you can see, has a platform for your feet to stand up on. Some gyms don't have that, where you kind of just got to jump in. If you are doing it weighted, I strongly recommend not jumping into it, using some sort of platform to get you started off right. So I'm just going to step up into this, get my hands in a good position. It's pretty basic, guys. I'm going to get up. I'm going to cross my feet like this, just because if my legs are straight and I come all the way down, my feet might hit the floor. I'm going to lean forward, like I said, and just go up and down, guys. Pretty basic. Now, as with some of the other exercises, the biggest mistake that we tend to see on the dips is guys not going deep enough. Again, this becomes more of an ego thing than anything else. You get people that put too much weight and they're short stroking it. Guys, you don't want to do that. As with everything else, full range of motion is going to help give you the best muscle development, and that is or holds true for the dips as well. So again, make sure you're going nice and deep on these. That's going to get you the best results. All right, guys, next up is going to be the cable crossover. We did a few pressing exercises. Now we're going to be doing an isolation exercise here with the cable crossover. Now, Crunch Fitness here in Appleton has some really nice brand new equipment, some state-of-the-art cable crossover setups. In fact, they have a handful here. But this cable crossover setup is going to be pretty standard across most gyms. new and old school. If you don't have a cable crossover setup, a similar exercise can be done with dumbbells or can be done on a pec deck. But for today, we're going to be focusing again on this cable variation of the fly. Now, guys, it's going to be a pretty basic exercise. We're going to set the handles a little bit above shoulder width or a little bit above shoulder height rather, is generally what I prefer. Some guys will have it straight out to the side. Again, I prefer to have it a little bit higher, but it comes down to personal preference. We're gonna, again, get them matched up. Obviously, guys, you want both sides the same height. Picking a weight that you can control with good form on the cable crossovers is very important, guys. You're gonna be stretching back real deep. You don't want to have the weight be pulling your entire body back when you're using too much, and you certainly don't want to be getting, you don't want to be getting those tears from having your arms pulled back. Again, this is one of those exercises where if you're doing it with sloppy form and you're doing it with too much weight, you're going to be putting yourself at a higher risk for injury, being that your arms are being pulled back like that. But that all being said, we're going to get started. I've selected a relatively light weight. Got these metal handles here. There's different variations of handles you can use depending on what your gym has available. I'm just going to stick with these old school ones. So I'm going to get a good grip, guys. I'm going to get my feet about shoulder width apart. Now, I prefer to have my feet together when I do these. Some guys prefer to stagger their feet, and when you start getting into some heavier cable crossovers, sometimes staggering your feet like this is going to give you a little bit more front to back stability. I tend to go a little bit lighter on this exercise, really focus on the squeeze, so having my feet shoulder width apart and in line with each other works out well for me. So I'm just going to start here. I'm going to step forward just a hair so I'm getting a good stretch on the back side so the weight is not only pulling my arms apart but back a little ways, and I'm just going to bring the weight forward in a nice controlled manner. Back and forward. Now, one of the biggest mistakes we tend to see with this is guys using too much weight, trying to lean into it and use your whole body to move the weight. We don't want to be doing that, guys. We want to let our chest do all the work. Now, some people prefer to get a little bit more of a squeeze on the front end, so they'll actually cross their arms over. That's going to look like this. And usually guys will alternate, when they're coming one arm over, and then the next over, the other one on the following rep. Again, it's just a matter of personal preference. I prefer to just come together in the middle and get a good squeeze. All right, guys, and our final exercise in our chest workout today is going to be the dumbbell pullover. This is a real old school exercise, guys. All this exercise takes is a bench and a dumbbell. Now, some people also like to use kettlebells for this particular exercise. It's a little bit of a grip variation, but not all gyms have those. Pretty much every gym has dumbbells and a bench. So again, guys, this is an exercise that you can do pretty much anywhere. Basically, guys, we're just going to get our hands on the base of the dumbbell. We're going to be bringing our hands over our head like this, back to this position, getting a nice deep stretch, working that upper pec. Generally speaking, to get this exercise started, you're going to be perpendicular to the bench you're working on. Some people prefer to go the long way. Again, I prefer to be perpendicular on the bench. I feel like I get a little bit better support that way. You're going to set the dumbbell down just like this, standing upright. I'm going to slip down onto the bench, get the back of my shoulders across the bench. I'm going to make sure my head is off it. Like I said, I don't want to be too far down. I don't want to be too far up to where all of a sudden my back is arching too much. Again, I'm going to get my shoulders across the back of the bench, get a nice firm base. You can see my legs are at about a 90-degree angle. Again, that's giving me a nice solid base to start this exercise. I'm going to cup the dumbbell like this. Guys, the grip that you're going to end up seeing me have the dumbbell in is like this. So I'm going to cup the dumbbell like that, turn, bring it up over my chest, and I'm just going to come nice and slow down over my head, just like this. Now, one thing you don't want to do, guys, is you don't want to use too heavy of a weight where you start getting on the bottom end of this exercise and it starts straining your upper pecs too much. I'm going to go down so my arms are pretty much parallel with the floor, but I don't want to go a lot deeper than that because that's where we start looking at putting yourself at a higher risk for injury. So again, just going to bring the weight down in a nice controlled manner and back up over my chest. right, guys, and that is going to do it for another episode of MD Training 101. Let's do a little bit of a recap on our workout today. We started with our barbell bench press, went to an incline dumbbell press, over to the dips, headed over to the cable crossovers after that, and finished with the dumbbell pullover. Now, as with our other routines, generally, guys, I recommend you stay between about 8 and 12 reps. If you're going to go on the heavier side, I wouldn't really go much lower than 6. You start going higher than that 12 to 15 rep range, starts getting to be more of an aerobic workout than it is muscle building, and that's not the goal for these particular workouts. As with our other workouts, also, you guys want to make sure you're doing a lot of warm-ups, especially with these flat dumbbell bench press, or barbell bench press rather. Again, as I had stated earlier on in the video, an exercise that we tend to see a little bit higher injuries on, so making sure you do a lot of warm-up sets and really working through the weights, that's going to help you avoid injury. If you guys are working up to 315 or 405 or whatever you're working up to, it's good to work up in increments. Nothing wrong with doing a couple warm-up sets with just the bar, a plate on each side, a plate and quarters, 2 plates. Better to spend a little bit more time warming up than to walk away with an injury. Now, as far as sets per exercise, the chest is a big muscle group, so as with the back and the leg workout we did, recommend about 4 sets per exercise. Now with the 5 exercises we did tonight, that's going to give you about a 20 set workout. Again, a little bit higher volume than some people might like, but for the chest being a bigger muscle group, I prefer to go a little bit higher volume, and I think 20 sets is a good number. Guys, the best advice I can give closing up today's video is the same advice I give you all the time. Make sure you check your ego at the door, train hard, train smart. You're going to see the progress that you want to see. That's going to do it for another episode of MD Training 101. For David Bay, we're out.